Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are around the world. Thank you for being part of iMoot 2015. Right now, we've got Kristina from Catalyst IT, a Mahara guru, doing a presentation on Moodle with the side of ePortfolio. Thank you, Kristina.
Thank you, Dom, for the introductions. And welcome to everyone around the world. So we've got Canberra, North Carolina, Melbourne, Darwin, and also Japan already in the room. I'm calling in from New Zealand. So it's in the early afternoon hours on the second day of iMoot, and I hope everything is going very well so far for you in the mood. Have you already been able to participate in many sessions? That's fantastic. So today's session is going to talk not just about Moodle, but also about Mahara, which is an ePortfolio system. And oftentimes we do talk about Mahara in conjunction with Moodle because we can combine the two, integrate the two, and that's the purpose of my presentation today. What I want to talk about to just give you some ideas or expand your horizon on what you can do of combining Moodle as learning management system with Mahara as ePortfolio system. I myself am the project leader for the Mahara project. I work for Catalyst IT here in New Zealand, and there we have the core development team of Mahara, but we have also developers around the world that contribute to the project, like Moodle as well, just on a much smaller scale. And today I want to not so much talk about the principles of Mahara, but more look at the integration with Moodle. If you're entirely new to Mahara, I would recommend Sigi Jakob Kühn's presentation here at iMoot entitled Power to the Learner. She gave her first presentation just a few hours ago, and will give a repeat of the session on Monday, I believe, or Sunday, depending on where you are located in the world. And there you'll learn more about how Mahara is used on its own, and you'll also see some examples. But in order not to have two presentations that are too similar, I decided to really focus on the integration with Moodle. But of course, in the beginning, just to give you a brief overview, I'll also touch on some principles, some general principles of Mahara, so that we get everybody on the same page. It would also be great if you let us know in the chat if you are already a Mahara user or if you're entirely new to the platform. So when we look at combining Moodle and Mahara, some people say, why would you actually do it? And so H.D. Hurt from Germany, he works in a school in Kassel, he said really nicely, Moodle is theirs. So meaning Moodle is the teacher's environment, the administrator's environment, and that is also already reflected in the title of Learning Management System. It is a management tool, whereas Mahara is yours. So Mahara is really there for the learner. It's actually started as a personal learning environment. Here in New Zealand, it was started by a number of universities back in 2006 as a project. And they really wanted to make something complementary to learning management systems that were used. Just to be able to also give the students a better voice, to make it possible for them to express themselves and not just in a course context. Great to see that some of you are already Mahara users and some are new, so hopefully there'll be something in for everybody. So what can you actually do with Mahara? I already mentioned that it started out as a personal learning environment. So that's of course where showcasing your work comes in quite heavily, and also showing your progress or development that you have made over a course of time. And then also showing processes of how you For example, in teacher education, kind of started developing a curriculum at the beginning of a term, and then what a curriculum looked like that you developed towards the end of it, so that you can see the progress that you've made over the term time, but also the processes that you've went through. So that's where the roots of Mahara are. That the learner decides what they want to put into their portfolio, what they want to present, what they want to keep for themselves, and really set up an environment where they are in the center of attention. But of course, over the years, educators also discovered that portfolios are really great for classroom work and can enhance learning and really or use it instead of testing or quizzes, and therefore it's also being used for assessment purposes. And that is in particular where the connection between Moodle and Mahara comes to play. And just to let you know where Mahara was developed, just on the world map, we'll have Wellington there on the bottom right, but it is actually used around the globe in many different countries and with many different users. So we have users in schools, in universities, in other tertiary institutions, and also in further education institutions, as well as increasingly in associations and professions where the people need to show competencies and skills, and where they are re-accredited after a certain number of years. Because a portfolio is really, really well suited for that, because you can showcase your competencies, you can really show what you have done, because oftentimes you simply need to demonstrate that, either by having a video recording, by making a photo, uploading a photo, or also uploading any other evidence. So what does Mahara actually mean? Well, it is a Mari term, and it means to think or thinking. And the project team back in 2006 thought that this was really a very good reflection of what Mahara can do, because one big part of working with portfolios is to think and to reflect on what you have been doing. But thinking is not just the only thing you do when you create an ePortfolio. Something else is that you actually create content, because in order to have something in your portfolio, you need to create content first by writing a journal entry, for example, or creating a video that you can then also make available. But oftentimes we don't just have content that we want to create in a platform, but we already have existing content that is stored on the computer. For example, a presentation that you gave, a document that you developed, a curriculum plan that you just created on your computer with the regular tools that you're used to working with. And so you can upload all of that into Mahara to have available in your portfolio. And of course, you can also aggregate content. And that means that you can also use content from third-party sites like YouTube, SlideShare, or graphic animation tools that you use in order to create multimedia content. You can put those into your portfolio as well. Because Mahara is not a tool that can do everything. It can only or it has a limited range of functionalities in terms of creating content, so in terms of authoring content. And therefore, you are able to use all the other tools that you have available and still be able to put them into your portfolio so that you can build your portfolio having everything in one place. So also, if you like using Prezi, you can embed your Prezi presentations. You can, if you have a plugin, you can write chemical formulas, or you can embed mind maps and do a lot of things so that your e-portfolio, your electronic portfolio, is really enriched. And of course, one very important aspect of e-portfolios is that you reflect. And so once you've created your content directly in Mahara, collected it from your computer, or aggregated it from around the web where you are active, you can then reflect on that content. Because a ePortfolio is not meant to be just a storage space for content, but it is something where you really think again, look back at what you have done, whether you want to do things differently, and what you might then want to do in the future and change things. And now that you have worked with all your content, you're at the stage where you can organize that into your portfolio, where you can combine things from different sites and then put them together to showcase them or to give to an instructor for assessment purposes, or where you also, even just for yourself, can show your progress that you have made over time. And of course, if you are doing a showcase portfolio, you would present that to a lecturer or to other people that are on the platform or that you want to share things with. And the important thing in ePortfolios is oftentimes that you can create a portfolio, but you don't necessarily have to share it with somebody immediately. And only after a certain amount of time do you then make it available to others when you feel comfortable showing off what you have done. So somewhat in contrast to a learning management system where the teacher always knows what is on the platform, so which assignments students have uploaded, or if you participated in a wiki discussion, then the teacher has directly access to what you have written in the wiki, or if you uploaded an assignment, then the teacher directly has access to that. In Mahara, the student can keep things from the teacher for the time being and really just only open up what he wants them to show. So it is more the relationship of having something on the computer and before uploading it to a learning management system. Just that in this case, you can do everything online. And yes, Tabitha, maybe sometimes you never actually share things with others. If you want to kind of keep a diary for yourself or a reflective journal that really is only for you. Joshua, yes, students can keep things permanently from teachers. And what you can also do is that you make one portfolio available to one teacher and then another portfolio you make available to only your friends. So your teacher would not know that you actually have a second portfolio. But of course, if you want to use the portfolios for assessment purposes, at some stage, the student, of course, needs to make their portfolio available to you. And though Mahara is most widely known as ePortfolio system, it actually goes beyond that, because the project team already realized very early on that ePortfolio work, while important, cannot only just involve one person. It must involve multiple people, and it's also a good way to have social learning practices practiced by students and also engage in them. And therefore, you can also collaborate on Mahara in groups, either by creating group portfolios, so portfolios that are authored by multiple people, or you can also use the groups to discuss things, to discuss a project, to form small working groups, and really have your own online space. So you can really set up small communities of practice or project groups that can work together. And again, the people in the group decide who shall have access to their groups. And last but not least, already started mentioning it, you can start networking on Mahara. This is in particular interesting when you have a so-called multi-tenanted Mahara instance, meaning that multiple and different institutions, either from one country or from multiple countries, can work together, and then because everyone has access to it, you can talk to each other. In New Zealand, we have this, for example, with myportfolio.school.nz. That is a Mahara instance available to all New Zealand schools. And so teachers, no matter from where around the country, can talk to each other, can work in groups, can exchange opinions about ePortfolio work, because in one school you might have 5 teachers working with ePortfolios and in another only 1. So if you were in the school where you are all on your own and working with ePortfolios, if you had your own little instance, then you would not be able to talk to anybody about your concerns, your ideas, reflect on your practices, whereas on myportfolio.school.nz, the teachers can all work together and support each other. Thank you for putting the links there, Tabitha. So now that was a brief overview of kind of what you can do on Mahara. But since the topic today is looking in particular at the connection with Moodle, how can you get the two actually talking to each other? Well, the one big thing that we still have for that is Moodle networking, MNet. And I did put all the links that you see displayed on the slides in the course space on iMoot so that you can then easily access them. There's also a link to the presentation file. So MNet is normally being used for connecting Moodle sites together, but you can also very easily connect a Moodle site to a Mahara. And that allows you to have single sign-on so that when students log into Moodle, they're immediately also logged into Mahara. And you don't have to give them another password or they need to remember another site. They simply go from one platform into the other. There is also the possibility to use the built-in portfolio plugin, which allows users to export content to Mahara from Moodle from certain activities. And if you're more adventurous, you can also install the Mahara assignment submission plugins, which allow you to assess a portfolio from that was created in Mahara directly within Moodle, and making it easier for teachers to actually access those portfolios without having to deal with all the permission settings that we have in Mahara. And there are altogether two plugins available for Mahara. One is the actual assignment submission plugin, and then there is a related feedback plugin. And we always recommend to install both of them because the submission plugin is necessary in order to see the portfolio pages. And then the feedback plugin allows you to also give feedback directly on Mahara pages and not just the Moodle gradebook. So let's take a quick look at what these things look like when you combine Moodle and Mahara together. So here we assume that the MNet connection has already been set up. That is something that the site administrator can do simply on the front end. There's no server access necessary. And in a lot of institutions, especially when they have Moodle and Mahara together, that has already been done. And the nice thing is also that the Mahara site does not have to sit on the same server as Moodle. So you can really connect your Moodle site to any Mahara, no matter where in the world it is hosted, making it really easy for you to also join a multi-tenanted instance if necessary. So when you once you activated the export from Moodle into Mahara, your learners will see a tiny, tiny icon. That is where the number 1 is on this screenshot. That allows them to click it and then export their content into Mahara through a couple of steps. And you have two choices of exporting. One is just as an HTML file, and another is as lib2a. Or if you just upload a file, you can also simply upload that. And that gives you a little bit of flexibility of where you want to have your content in the end in Mahara. You can upload a number of things from Moodle, namely glossary entries, forum entries, and then also assignments that have been uploaded to the regular Moodle assignment plugin. Because those are things that are user-generated, that one user had created, that they can put into their own portfolio. If you are the teacher in a course, you can actually even export an entire forum discussion. I believe that had been disabled for individual users from the Moodle side, so that no plagiarism can be done, and that also copyright is kind of kept in mind when students export content. Therefore, they can only get their own. So once students have gone through a couple of steps to export their portfolio or their activity, it then ends up in Mahara. In this case, I exported it as HTML file. So it appears as HTML file in my files area directly in Mahara. And once I have it there, I can then put it into my portfolio page and have it available directly there. So if my institution decides to, at the end of a term, to terminate my access to a course in Moodle, then if I exported my content before I lose access into my portfolio, I still have all my research available or forum discussions that I contributed to. Because kind of in constructivist learning, it is really, or social constructivist learning in particular, it is really important that you don't just have access to your learning for the period of a term, but also afterwards in order to go back to it again. And by exporting the content into Mahara, you have the possibility of keeping that content kind of safe and also for longer, even once you leave the university or the school, and can continue working with it. Tabitha asked if we have Turnitin on our site, can we export those items to Mahara? If you use Turnitin with the Moodle assignment and your students upload a file, then those files can be exported to Mahara, because Turnitin only looks at the Moodle assignment and the file when it is uploaded, but the result of Turnitin would not be exported to Mahara. Ellen asked, where is the content kept? Exported to Mahara, but is it on the local server? As soon as you export something from Moodle into Mahara, it is being put into Mahara, so onto the server where Mahara sits, so that it is in the student's portfolio. So there is no link to Moodle for that file anymore. So if you upload a file to a Moodle assignment and then export that to Mahara, the file exists in Moodle and it exists in Mahara. So it exists twice. Cloud-based, you can put your Mahara or your Moodle into the cloud, but essentially there is still a server involved, so it does sit always where the site is. So now to the exciting part, number 2, which is the portfolio submission. So in the first part, we looked at how you can get content that is in Moodle into Mahara. Therefore, looking at something that you have done for the class in your regular, the regular way that you use Moodle, how you can keep that in a portfolio for a longer period of time, where you as learner have control over. Now let's reverse that, because if you are interested in working with portfolios, you don't just want to use them for showcasing, but you may want to use it for project work, or you want to use it really for the students to show you what they have worked on and how they have progressed over a period of time. And that's where you would actually have the activity sitting directly in Mahara, and you would do the grading and the reviewing and the giving feedback in Moodle. And that is what we look into with portfolio submission. So I've already mentioned that there are 2 plugins that you can use. And in this case, we installed the Mahara Assignment Submission plugin. And that enhances the existing Moodle assignment plugin, so your standard Moodle assignment, by Mahara functionality. So instead of uploading a file, you would be able to see the portfolio pages and also collections that you have created. Because a portfolio can be a short one, just consist of 1 page, Or you could also have a longer one, so where you have an introduction page, then you have a page for phase 1, a page for phase 2, and then final remarks, all on separate pages so that you don't have a scroll of death in your portfolio. And that's what we call a collection. So you can link your portfolio into the assignment. So you first submit it. And before we go any further, I just briefly want to talk about portfolio locking versus non-locking. So when we do assessments, we oftentimes want to see everything and not have students make changes. That is very easy when we have a file that the student needs to upload, because once they've uploaded it, they cannot make changes. For a few versions of Moodle now, there has been the possibility to submit a draft to the Moodle assignment, so that during the submission period, students can still kind of make changes, re-upload the file, and then they click a submit button. And you can do something very similar with your Mahara assignments as well. So if you say, well, I do want to have kind of a final product that I can give feedback on, then you can turn on the portfolio locking. And that means as soon as the student makes the final submission to the portfolio or into the Moodle assignment, then the portfolio becomes uneditable. So they cannot make any changes to it and cannot change the content on it. So journal entries they have put in there cannot be changed. Files they've uploaded to the portfolio that they are submitting cannot be changed. They cannot change the layout and so on. Then on the other hand, you might have the situation where you say, well, I want the students to submit their portfolio, but I do want to be able to look at it over a longer period of time so that I can give them continuous feedback. So instead of having a one point in time submission, you have a continuous review of the portfolio. And so if you don't want to do that directly in Mahara, you can nowadays do that in Moodle as well. Namely, simply by not asking students to lock their portfolio through the assignment. So that is just an assignment setting in Moodle. And that way, at the beginning of the term, the students can submit their portfolio to the assignment so that you as teachers have access to it, but they can continue working on it and can make changes. But you can already start giving them feedback on their portfolio. So now what does this actually look like for you as a teacher once students have submitted their portfolio? So now we are in the Moodle Gradebook, so that is your standard screen when you look at a Moodle assignment. And instead of seeing a file submission, you see Mahara portfolio and a link to the portfolio. So you're just in your regular environment, and that's what I really like about the Mahara assignment submission plugin. Because while we are having another platform that we are using, namely Mahara, which looks different from Moodle, which has different functionality in it, which works differently, you as teachers, initially when you grade a portfolio, you can still do that in your familiar setting of Moodle, because you all have been working with the assignments plugin already, so you're familiar with that. You can use your regular tools. You don't have to learn a new way of assessing your students. And so once you click on that proposal link, you will be taken to the Mahara portfolio of the students that you're looking at. And then you can review the portfolio, you can give feedback directly on the portfolio in Mahara, or you can reserve it to give feedback in Moodle in the standard little text box that is available. And to make it easy for you to go back to Moodle, there is even a back to Moodle button so that you don't have to work with different windows. So just a quick answer to Maureen's question. What are the advantages of submitting a portfolio through Moodle rather than just sharing it? The two advantages that I see, Maureen, are namely that you can use Moodle for assessment purposes so that the grade still gets put into Moodle and you don't have to record it in a separate space or in a separate spreadsheet and then add the grade to Moodle. And the second one is that you can log portfolios if you want to use that, and therefore allowing students not to make changes while you're looking at their portfolio. And then actually a third one really is that instructors don't always have to go into another platform in order to look at the portfolios. But I'm not saying that only because you can grade a portfolio or assess a portfolio or give feedback to a portfolio in Moodle doesn't mean that you should not actually also log into Mahara and create a portfolio for yourself and know what functionality is available. I'm really just looking at the assessment functionality of working with a portfolio. And especially when you use ePortfolios for assessment, you may want to use a rubric. And Mahara currently does not yet have rubrics available. There is a plugin that you can use developed by a Japanese developer, but it's not in Mahara core yet. So if you are very familiar with using the rubric in Moodle, then you can very easily hook that into your assessment process and use that. So Sam asked, is it possible to share the student's Mahara submission with the entire class? If so, who controls that, the student or the instructor? That's a very good question, Sam. If you want to share a Mahara portfolio from one student with the entire class, that would need to be, I would propose to have that done directly in Mahara, that the student shares it with the class. And you can do that by setting up a group in Mahara. That can also be automated via LDAP. So for example, if you have your classes created in Moodle via LDAP, then your groups in Mahara can be created in a similar fashion, or they can also be set up manually. And then the student can share their portfolio with the group, because that gives them greater control of knowing who has access to their portfolio. You could change the permissions for the Mahara assignment in Moodle so that everyone can also look at the grader report, but that oftentimes involves a bit more changes. So now that you've viewed the portfolio here of the student in Mahara and click the Back to Moodle button, you can get to the same grader overview in Moodle that you're used to from the assignment. So here, because there's a lot of stuff on the screen when you work with a rubric, I've only shown you the top of it, because they have your regular submission status that you're used to from other assignments. And then in this case, I've set up a rubric to grade the portfolio, because that is oftentimes a very well-suited assessment tool to give students feedback. And then, of course, you can also still give personal feedback to the students, either directly in the rubric by filling in the feedback area if you're allowed for that, or you can also use the feedback option at the bottom. So some people, of course, aren't able to install a plugin easily on their Moodle site, or don't really want to go into the hassle of having yet another plugin on Moodle. So there are a few alternatives that people work with to still achieve something similar. Namely, the most frequently used alternatives are the secret URL and the portfolio export. So just to give you an example of how that would work, instead of working with the Mahara assignment submission plugin, you would still set up an assignment in Moodle for your portfolio submission, but your students would create their Mahara portfolio and then create a so-called secret URL and put that into Moodle, so that you then click onto a link and you're immediately taken into Mahara. The advantage of that, besides not having to worry about the plugin, is also that you don't even have to hook up your Moodle to a Mahara site. But you could have them entirely separate, because the student gives you a secret link, so a link that is not really easily readable and memorizable, but that you can click and then you have access to the portfolio. But as soon as the student takes that link away, you don't have access to the portfolio anymore. And that's why a number of organizations, besides using the secret URL for immediate access to the portfolio, also ask the students to export the portfolio, either as HTML export or as Leap2A export. HTML is oftentimes a little bit easier because you can view it directly in a browser without needing a Mahara instance, but the Leap2A export allows you to put it back into the portfolio. And so these two things combined make it possible for you to view the portfolio that the students created, give feedback on it, but also have a copy of the portfolio in Moodle, because oftentimes once you've graded something, once you assess the student, you do need to keep records for 5 or 7 years. So that is something that we are looking into enhancing also with the Moodle, with the Mahara assignment submission plugin, that we can actually make it possible to keep a record of the portfolio that has been submitted in Moodle so that institutional requirements are met. Great that I could answer your question there, Maureen. If you you don't actually need Moodle for working with for assessing a Mahara portfolio, the alternative to that would be that you set up a group in Mahara and allow students to submit their portfolios there. And with that method, we already have the possibility that portfolios are automatically stored on the server as soon as they are being released from by the instructors. However, that hasn't quite made it into the Moodle assignment or into the Mahara assignment submission plugin. So now another item that, or another area of connecting Moodle and Mahara that I'd like to look into is transfer of achievements. Because so far we've looked at how you can transfer content from your Moodle site into Mahara so that you have that available for your lifelong portfolio. The second aspect that we looked at was how you can assess and give feedback on a portfolio directly in Moodle, even though the portfolio sits in Mahara. And now the third aspect is how can we actually transfer any achievements? So once we've completed a course or an activity, received the badge for it, how can we put that back into Mahara and also keep that in our portfolio? Because there it is not possible to export the badge into Mahara directly, but we would need to go a slightly different way. And as you all most likely know, the Moodle uses open badges to issue badges, and you can issue badges in a number of ways, namely for just by saying a teacher issues a badge manually, or you can issue a badge based on activity completion or based on course completion. And once you've issued a badge, the recipient earns it. And in this case, I use the activity completion to earn my badge, namely by simply having submitted a proposal for a project. I earned the first course badge. And in this case, I do want to make that available also in my portfolio, where I also keep the project proposal altogether. So what I can do now in this case is export that badge or transfer it into my backpack, into my Mozilla backpack, where it sits alongside all the other badges that I have earned. And then I can display that in Mahara on a regular portfolio page. So I can put all my certificates, if they are available as badges, directly on the page where I showcase what I have done in order to earn the certificate, for example. And that makes it very easy and also shows that you can put everything back together. So you don't have to go to the Mozilla backpack, or to a public collection or to the Open Badge Passport to view the badge that you have received in a course. You don't have to go to Moodle in order to see the assignments that you submitted for it, but you can put everything together in one place in your portfolio and keep it for however long you want. And you can also repurpose it. So on this page, I kind of decided to display my project achievements and my iMoot 2014 badges, but I can also display a different combination of badges on a separate page. So I could also make up a conference page where I display all my conference badges, not really worrying about my project badges. And so these are just three of the ways, of the three important ways, how you can combine Moodle and Mahara so that they can enhance each other, that you can still use formal ways of learning, but also combine them with social learning and also newer pedagogies of group work and also portfolio work, and make it possible for learners to also take more control of their learning so that they also can decide how much of what they have learned in class or outside of class they want to keep or showcase or share with others. Now, if you got interested, especially for those newbies here in the room, you're very welcome to give Mahara a try at demo.mahara.org. And then if you are interested in working with it, you can install it. You can either install it from Git, or here I provided the link to the download, and version 15.04 is our latest version. Just this year, we moved to a database versioning system. So that means that the 15 stands for 2015 and the 04 stands for April. And that way, in the future, all our Mahara users will know which version of Mahara they are working with and when it was released, and therefore also know how long it will still be supported, namely also for 18 months like Moodle. So in terms of how the release cycle works from Mahara, it is fairly similar to the Moodle one, only that we are 1 month earlier. So we release in April and October of each year. We are also on a 6-monthly release cycle, and we support our Mahara versions for up to 18 months, like Moodle does. And so that makes it very easy for people in the Northern Hemisphere to also upgrade their Mahara site over summer, and for people in the Southern Hemisphere to upgrade their Mahara site over our summer down here. Like Moodle also, you can customize Mahara, not with as many plugins, but you have a good choice available, and we actually still put a lot of features into core Mahara so that there's not so much need to work with plugins, because there are still a lot of features that we can make our user base available directly in core and give them better options. You can upload a logo very easily. You can create a theme so that you can put your institution brand on it. You can oftentimes use a Moodle theme and kind of brand Mahara similarly. What you can't do is put a Moodle theme directly on Mahara, because they are two different softwares, even though they both had their, or Mahara had its starting place in the Moodle community by Moodle developers becoming Mahara developers. But by now, over the years, they've diverged quite a bit so that you would have a different theme, but you can make it look very similar to what your Moodle site looks so that you can achieve a common look and feel across the two. And then there we have some plugins. Now, just to give you an idea of what a Mahara site can look like, just a few examples to show you that not every Mahara site needs to look like what you can see on demo.mahara.org, but you can really customize it. Here we've got a screenshot of myportfolio.school.nz. That is the theme that we developed just at the beginning of the year to refresh the site, and there we use different icons, really put more content also on the site so that teachers new to it can find themselves, know what the site can be used for, and also make it more accessible for younger students. Then in this case, this is ePortfolio. That is a European initiative which also uses Mahara for part of its project. And here you see this Mahara site looks entirely different. So they are much lighter, taken back, have different colors, and then also puts their branding directly on it. Now to a completely different Mahara site. Initially, you might not even know that this is Mahara. This is a workflow from the University of the Arts London, and that is a highly customized Mahara site. So Mike Kelly makes it possible for his students to have their public pages directly displayed on the Mahara homepage. And when you go to workflow.arts.ac.uk, you can hover over the images and then click directly onto the portfolios of the students and you get to them. But everything in the backend is still Mahara. And we are looking into how we can actually bring that customization also to the wider Mahara community for use, because a lot of people find this very appealing and very nice to take a look at, and therefore also share public portfolios with the wider community and give students the space where they can present themselves. But Mahara is not only used in the academic school and university context, but here we have a site that is set up for the Principals Australia Institute. So this is Palnet, available to all principals in Australia, and it is more of a community site, so more a community of practice. The ePortfolios take a step back there, but this site is heavy on having group interactions, conversations between users. They also have a number of customizations in there, namely so that you can register for events, you see event details, you have images for groups and so on. So this is also another great site that showcases the potential of what you can do with Mahara when you also think beyond what is available per default. And just like Moodle, Mahara is a community of users. So while Mahara is a software, we actually live through the users, and the development work is done by users for users, and we involve our users. So here you see a number of our community roles. We have the ninja, which is our contributor. So, and that can be anybody of you. Even when you contribute a bug report or a feature request, you are a member of the Mahara community. Then, of course, we have our student, so our user of Mahara. In this case, he represents all users, and now he's also joined by the educator. We have a translator. Translators are really, really important in our community to make Mahara more accessible to people around the world. And we have a number of translation packages that have been kept up to date for many years. So Japanese usually is fully translated, German is translated, French, Slovenian. There is the beginnings of a Chinese translation, Spanish is available, Italian, and so on. So some language packs are not quite fully translated, so that you only see certain words in your language, but we usually have between 8 and 15 language packs that are around 80 to 85% translated, or even up to 100%. Then we also have a bot, so that is not a person per se, but that does some processes in the background so that everything runs smoothly. We have a security guard who reports and fixes security issues so that no data is being leaked. Then we, of course, also have in the community people who give support, or that can also be you who give support at your institution. So Tabitha Rhoda, for example, she is a community member who has the support role because she supports people at Unitec along with her colleagues. Then we've got the core developer, the code reviewer. So like Moodle, we also, every piece of code that is written also goes through a peer review process so that we can spot any mistakes and issues early on. Then we have conference organizers, because for a number of years, people have been organizing conferences such as Mahara UK or the Mahara Open Forum in Japan. And since last year, we also have a conference in New Zealand, Mahara Hui, and we have conferences in Germany and also in France. And while not the organizers don't necessarily contribute code to Mahara, they do make a great contribution to the community by organizing these events and bringing other Mahara users together. We have the documentation writer, the tester, and we have a packager, again, that is more of a automated process. And last but not least, we also have a designer, and those are the people who make all the portfolio sites really pretty so that users also like going to them. So if you have any questions for Mahara, how things work on my portfolio here in New Zealand, or if you even have questions of, I'm using Mahara in area XYZ, do you know if somebody else is using that in that area, please feel free to drop me a line via email or contact me on Twitter, because I might be able to help you get in touch with others, start networking with people in your area, but somewhere else in the world. And we'd also like you to be in the community and then ask questions once you have started working on Mahara, or even before then, if you have any, to kind of make up your mind and make a decision. So that concludes my presentation, and we still have a few minutes time if you have any questions so that we can answer them. Or we can also look into screen sharing if you want to see something specific. And please feel free
Kristina.
to turn on your microphone if you want to speak instead of typing.
All right, I'll enable that. Well, before the questions start rolling in, on behalf of the iMoot team, we want to thank you very much, Kristina, for the great presentation on Mahara. We'll still keep going, obviously, and I'll just make sure that people can talk on their mics as well now.
Great, thank you, Don. Please also let me know if I missed a question in the chat, if it was falling by a bit too fast and I didn't catch it, so that I can answer it now. How might I store a portfolio after marking feedback for the purposes of internal and external moderation? Fantastic question, Maureen. There are a number of ways. One would be, of course, that the portfolio is exported. So if you just work on Mahara, you could, for Mahara 1.10 on, you can have your the portfolios that have been submitted in a Mahara group. You can have those automatically copied to the server in leap2a format, so that you can still continue working with them afterwards and give them to a moderator. Alternatively, you can also have students create an HTML page and download that and send that off to moderation. But what teachers on my portfolio.school.nz actually do is that, because they do NCQA moderation, is that they oftentimes grade these students, give them feedback on their portfolios, and then ask the students to allow the teacher to make a copy of that portfolio. Then they copy that portfolio into a group, because then they have the portfolio available, because if the student leaves the school, the portfolio gets deleted or can be deleted. And so instead, the teacher would have the student's portfolio in the group, can then take out things that they don't want to include for the moderation, and then give the external assessor access to that group portfolio within the site, so that they can also look at the introductory pages that might be needed for moderation. Alternatively, of course, you can ask the students to create a secret URL to their portfolio, which you then send to the external assessor. But that really depends on the students keeping that access open for the assessors, and especially if your assessment period or external moderation period is several months, then the student might close down the portfolio and you won't have access to it anymore. That's fantastic, Joshua, that you're getting more portfolios into your subjects. And one thing really is that we found over time is that you do need the buy-in from management in order to really institute a portfolio across an entire organization and not just have it in small pockets in using by one teacher or two teachers. It's a really great way to get started with portfolios, that you have the grassroots movement and see how it works in a classroom or in a university subject, and then continue it or expand it. But as soon as you want to go really, really bigger in an organization, it is usually necessary that management does take it on board and either gives time for teachers to also have professional development, because it is not necessarily so much learning the software, it is really changing your teaching methods around. Okay. Yeah, so it's not necessarily always easy to implement portfolios because there are a lot of competing viewpoints, and also already just looking at what sort of portfolio you want to implement. And therefore, it is good if you have a good process in place that helps you through the implementation process, so that you're not just saying we are having an ePortfolio or we are moving to ePortfolios, now let's do it, but that you really have some ideas of where you want to start, what the goal is, and how do you get from the start to the goal. If you want to learn more about Mahara, oftentimes at other Moodle Moots where you're not sitting online, there are also Mahara presentations. At this iMoot, as I mentioned in the beginning, Sigi is giving a presentation entitled Power to the Learner. So you can either watch the recording or go to her second session later towards the end of the iMoot, and also chat with her how she's been implementing portfolios in Germany. And then you can also find out by joining the Mahara community and following Mahara project on Twitter, and can connect with other people that way. We also have a lot of resources on the wiki, which help you get started finding presentations on what people have presented about Mahara in the past. We try to also do recordings. This year at Mahara Hui, we had video recordings, and so I'm in the process right now to finish uploading those. And if you follow Mahara project, you will also be alerted about them. Or you can, in this case, follow Mahara Hui or the hashtag Mahara Hui 15 in order to be updated on Twitter when those recordings become available. Because we had a really great variety of presentations from nurses from New Zealand and Australia, from university instructors, and also people outside of the university context and school context, in showcasing in how many different ways you can use Mahara, what stumbling blocks were that they happened upon and how they solved them. So Miriam from Unitech also gave a presentation, and also Claire Tate from Unitech on how portfolios are implemented there in nursing. And so by engaging with people around the community, you will gain some more insight in how Mahara can be used in many different ways. Because like with Moodle, you can use it in a very small extent, or you can go really big and make, customize it to your needs, and also use it in many different ways in your teaching. Okay, so maybe one last question if there is one. Otherwise, I think you'll have to you deserve the break before the next session starts.
All right then. Yep. Can you hear me okay, Kristina? Yes, excellent. Yeah, if that's the end of the question, thank you very much. I'll stop recording now, and we really appreciate your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dom.
Bye then.
Thank you very much for attending today's session. And yes, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, want to learn more about Mahara, and I'd be happy to help. And have a nice rest of iMoot.